Hello everyone and welcome back to Little Quilter. Today we're going to be starting a new quilt and it's going to be the Sparrows Quilt. So you guys have heard me talk about this quilt before in a previous video and we're actually going to start cutting into this. So I actually have pre-cut most of the fabric. I think I still have some of the background to do, but I was going to focus on getting the bird blocks done today. And I will tell you, so I bought this as a quilt kit and it came with all of the directions and everything. So the quilt is made up of some fat quarter colors for the actual birds themselves, the four major colors of it. A fat quarter, you have got to be careful. So I did have one issue. Now, whenever I iron my fabric, I do use best press to try and give them that stiffness that you want. I did run into, whenever I ironed those and was cutting them, let me show you on this one. I think it's on this one. Here we go. Yeah. So I only had one that was this dramatically short. The rest of them went really well, so I'm going to have to do just like 1/8" seams. But you can see here where I'm a little bit off. Now, I don't know that it's totally lined up properly here, but it's a little bit off, not consistently down the whole thing. So I'm just going to have to kind of fudge that one a little bit because I had no fabric to recut this. You use all of that fat quarter. Well, not all. You're basically left with this. So, I mean, scrap-wise, this is a great quilt kit. I'm not expanding my scraps with this too much, and I'm not ending up with a bunch of fabric left over. But for those of you who do starching, I'm not sure how much of that fabric shrinks when you do that excessive starching like they do on Fat Quarter Shop. I just used best press, and for the most part I was fine, but it is tight, so you have got to pay attention. The other thing that tells me is that I cannot mess up, so I don't want to cut something wrong because I legitimately do not have any more fabric to cut these. So I would have to just put the quilt on hold and buy a whole new thing of fabric for them. Okay, so with that information, the last bit is that this is the Sparrows Quilt by Pen and Paper, and the quilt is going to measure at the end of it 65.5 by 71 inches. It was a quilt kit that I purchased on my own, and I hope that you guys enjoy this, and let's go ahead and jump into getting this together. So the first thing we're going to do is do our half square triangles here. So this is a 4 at a time half square triangle. So you're going to take each piece that you've cut, layer them on top of each other. I'm actually going to do it with the dark side because it's just easier to see that dark blue as I am quilting and making sure everything's lined up. I feel like the tan gets kind of covered up. And then what we're going to do, because I know a lot of you have done half square triangles, so you're just going to, essentially you could mark a line. I'm not going to mark a line, and the reason for that is because I'm going to use my seam tape. So basically, all right, so you're going to use your 1/4 inch seam tape so that you end up sewing on either side of this red line, and that way you've got one done. And then you're going to do the same exact thing for a 4 at a time on the other side. So you'll end up with 4 sewing lines going across each other. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. All right, so we have done one row. Now we are going to go ahead and do another one here. 2, 3, And you know what? I've just realized that this is not a 4 at a time, it's an 8 at a time block. 4 at a time would just be one line across and then you would cut. So since we're doing 4 or 8 at a time, we're going to be cutting down the center line on either side, which is going to give us 8 at a time. So, but I'll show you guys that. All right, back to sewing along this line. Alright, so I've got most of these half square triangles done. Oh my gosh, there are so many half square triangles in this quilt. I don't think I realized it. I mean, I saw them in the picture, but actually sitting there and cutting and ironing and then squaring all of them up, that took a good chunk of time, and I still haven't finished all of them. So I decided to move on. Let me show you what I've got going on. Okay, so as we talked about before, this quilt block is a series of birds, and you basically have them in a few colorways, and then the other thing that we're doing is alternating directions of these birds. So the biggest thing, especially because I really do not have any sort of mess up fabric, is that I want to pay attention really closely to the directions of this fabric. So very similar to an Elizabeth Hartman in that we're going to be doing some diagonal seams, but the big thing to remember with this is that I have to ensure that these seams are going in opposite directions for each of them, especially once I cut, because if I cut one wrong, well, we're in trouble. I'll have to order fabric and the quilt will be on hold, which is not going to help with my timeline of trying to get this done for a friend who is pregnant and her little baby girl that she's going to have. So we're going to try and make sure that we pay attention and we do this the right way. Okay, so we've got our two lines here, and then we're going to basically do the same thing, splitting these up, and I find it much easier to do them in twos because I've usually folded my fabric over and cut them in twos so they kind of stick together that way. I did go ahead and cut all of the background fabric for this quilt. I haven't cut the sashing and the border, but I went ahead and cut all of the background fabric because I did actually need it for the blocks. So I had to do that last night rather than working on this. But my mother is watching my daughter and the cousins, so we are getting some free time to do some quilting early this morning. All right, let's start sewing this. So the big thing to remember with this, right, is that we're going to do one set of these going this way and one set going this way, right? So let's see, ultimately like this. I believe this is going to be the beak of the bird. Okay, so now we're actually going to start making the bird. I've gone ahead and I've got my beaks done in both directions, thankfully, did that correctly. And then I almost had a small moment of panic when I thought I had cut the wrong size, but it was actually just that I was grabbing the wrong piece. I thought it was supposed to be a background piece, but it's actually the bird head, or part of the bird, I should say. So we're going to, again, and I'm just going to go ahead and do it in all of the colors here that we've got for the bird, and we're going to go ahead and sew a piece, but making sure that we do them in opposite directions. So we want to separate them out so that we have 3 of each color going in each direction. And then, of course, as we said, right, so taking a piece at the top here, and one will be sewn in this direction and the other will be sewn in that direction. Okay, so I have got the beaks done. Aren't they cute? Little beaks going in opposite directions. Good job on my part there. Okay, so then if we look over here, we have this giant disaster zone of chain piecing. And basically I just went through and chain pieced as many parts together as I could for this. So now we're going to go through and clean all this mess up. And I think we're going to be able to put together at least a beak. Okay, everybody. Well, I didn't get quite as far as I was hoping. I was hoping to have all of basically the heads put together because we had finished all of the beaks and we had put together all of our eyeball little faces here, and then of course the bottoms as well. But timing, everything, you know how life happens, it just didn't happen for me. I did, however, get one completed so that I can show you guys what it's looking like. And as we progress through this, obviously going to go through, make the other ones. So a couple of things that I just had to watch was really taking care of placement, because all of these birds, there are 3 going in one direction, 3 going in the other direction. And so just moving through all of it, I really had to pay attention so that I made sure my diagonal seams were going in the correct direction. So just keep an eye on that if you're making this quilt. Otherwise, the next thing was just making sure that I was doing the color patterns as I was supposed to. So alternating between those colors and not doing the same ones, because I almost put them all together like just a giant red bird, a giant gray bird, a giant blue bird. I mean, they would still be beautiful, but that's not quite the look we're going for here. So this is one of the colorways. I think it's one of my favorite. I just love this orangey red color combined with this really light blue, and then just that nice dark blue pop of it sticking off on there. So I'm really excited by that. I'm also pretty excited by the size of this bird. So I really didn't think about like how big the birds were going to be when I was initially looking at the sparrow quilt pattern, and for some reason I thought they were going to be little bitty birds. But this is a decent sized bird. And so what's exciting about this is all of the quilty goodness that we can put into this bird. So I want you guys to go ahead, start brainstorming with me. Let's start thinking up things that we can free motion quilt in this. I want it to be light and airy. Again, this quilt is going to be going to a baby, so something easy for them to carry around, nothing too dense. But I do want to free motion quilt this one. I want to have some fun doing some fun background designs in the blue. Again, something nice and airy, but I think we can have a lot of fun with these birds, okay? Okay, so if you're interested in doing the Sparrows Quilt pattern, it's linked down below. This is the Sparrows Quilt by Pen and Paper Patterns, and I am loving it so far. I will say that in my quilt kit, the fabric was very tight on the colors of these birds. So make sure that you're paying attention when you're cutting those. But otherwise, I've really enjoyed this quilt. And so that is all I've got today. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this video. As always, don't forget to give me a like, thumbs up, subscribe, all of the YouTube things, and we will see you guys next time on The Little Quilter. Have a wonderful day.